Well, we're here with Kent Garrett, a longtime newsman who I worked with a number of years in New York State. And Kent has quite a resume in the business, CBS and NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw. Goes way back in the news business and also a pioneer of sorts in the civil rights movement, among the first black recruits that Harvard University took in the early 60s, and more about that later. But Kent, for some time now, we've been having a running bet with each other in previous discussions on previous media outlets that you felt there was no way that there would be a President Trump. I said all along that there would be. And turns out I'm right. I'm not gloating over it, but I just think that a lot of people miss the trends that put him in office. Now, those same trends work differently depending on your political perspective. You see some dire consequences ahead, and you have deep concerns about a President Trump. Can you tell us about some of the deepest concerns you have?
Well, I mean, I think he is going to actually institute some of the things that he's been talking about during the campaign. I mean, I think it's a bad day for minorities, especially Muslims, and for blacks, African Americans, and I actually think he's going to. And the main thing, though, I think that is that his wanted his tax increase or tax decrease of six. I think it's 6% now is really going to wreak havoc on the uh, white middle class and white lower class working class workers, and I think they're just going to see chaos and job losses in in the next year or so. I
There
don't.
may be buyer's remorse soon.
Yeah, it's going to be buyer's remorse, and I think this is one of the last elections where there is this significant, uh, white working man, angry white men uh, class group that's going to be significant. I forget what the year is, but I think it's 2025 or might be even 30 or something when the U.S. will be a majority country, and at that point, they're not going to have the influence that they've had and be able to swing elections like this. So I'm really quite worried about it. I mean, we're up here in Delhi. I mean, in Roxbury, we're just in
That's
total,
upstate New York.
yeah,
Upstate New York, yeah.
3 hours, 3.5 hours outside of New York City. We're in total despair in terms of what's going to happen next and what to do.
Well, how much damage do you think he can really do? Is he as much of a bigot as his critics have said, or was some of that campaign rhetoric for the uneducated white working class? And if he is truly bigoted, what kind of damage could he do in 4 years?
Well, I mean, I think he could really, if he makes an attempt to remove the 11 million or whatever it is, undocumented immigrants. I mean, that's going to wreck the economy right off. I mean, many people say that the economy itself really is run by immigrants. I mean, even up here in upstate New York, Roxbury. I mean, many of the dairy farms, for example, this is a big dairy area, are not managed, but run by workers who are Hispanic, and many of them, illegal. And that would wreck this industry up here if he makes that move.
Well, the argument would be among the Republicans and Trump supporters that if you eliminated the immigrant labor, which is often exploited and underpaid and without benefits, if you remove that element of the working force, they'd be forced to bring back regular jobs to quote regular Americans, and the economy would expand. What about that argument?
Well, I think there have been documentaries detailing that, especially in the dairy industry, that if in fact uh, those are jobs that Americans don't want to do. I mean, basically, I ran a dairy up here for about 10 years when I was working at Binghamton as well with you at 10 o'clock news. These are jobs that are low-paying jobs that Americans just don't want to do. I mean, they've done studies showing that they don't want to work in the milk industry, milk and be milkers like that. So I think a lot of the farms will go out of business as opposed to being able to hire American workers because the margins in the milk industry are so low. I mean, it's so small that I think many of them would go out of business.
Do you think that President Trump and some of his Republican establishment cohorts would really be able to unravel a lot of the civil rights legislation that's passed in the past 30, 40 years?
I'm not sure about, I don't think they would be able to unravel a lot of the civil rights uh, acts that have been passed already. I think we're safe, probably safe from that. But I mean, I think that more states would be encouraged to do voter suppression activities, which happened in some cases in this election. So I think more of that would happen, and that might be a function of his being able to put a Scalia-like person on the Supreme Court.
What about Trump's appeal during the campaign to blacks and minorities that it's been so bad you've been exploited by the liberal Democrats? Things have gotten worse. So what do you have to lose? What about
Well,
that argument?
I think the argument of what do you have to lose was really condescending, first off. I mean, and he really had no insight into what's really going on in the black communities. And there are some communities where there is a lot of violence and murders and all that. But I mean, I think he didn't make much of an appeal to the black community at all.
And you don't think any of that support might grow for him, the little support he has now among minorities, if he starts improving the economy and everybody benefits from it?
I mean, I don't think so, but I mean that's a possibility. I mean that is a possibility. But I mean, I think it's countered with his just overt racism. I mean, he has a history of being a bigot. Everybody knows about his, not letting apartments to blacks in New York City, and plus his reaction to the Central Park Five. There's four black and one Hispanic that was accused of murdering a jogger in New York City, and he took out a full-page ad in the New York Times saying that they should be given the death penalty when they were found to be, through DNA evidence found to be innocent later.
Well, his argument is that race relations have actually gotten worse under 8 years of the Obama administration, America's first black president, and that he would be an improvement over that.
Well, no, I don't agree with that. I mean, I think what his campaign has done is allowed these racists to, sort of come out of the woodwork, and he sort of equated public PC, politically correct, with racism, which or trying to. I mean, I think the racists have come out of the woodwork. I think in this society, you would estimate maybe there are 20%, maybe even 30% of people who are just out and out racist that are going to be out there. But I mean, I think he has made it not fashionable, but made it okay for these racists and these people on the right to come out and be racist.
Do you think as he enacts some of his agenda and his programs that a lot of it's going to calm down? His rhetoric is already calming down. He's speaking much more moderately now. So do you think that'll still encourage and foster an increase in racist attitudes, or will that also mollify as Trump himself becomes more center and less bombastic?
No, I think he's gonna. I think the racism is out of the. It's sort of like the analogy that the toothpaste is out of the
Tube.
canister tube and you can't put it back in. And I think that's what he's done. And I think it's just going to get worse. And I think, don't forget, he has to sort of feed the beast. I mean, he has to feed the monster that he has created, which are these these people on the right and these racists. So I think there'll be more incidents. I think a lot of it will be more directed towards Muslims maybe than blacks. But I think it's just out there.
Yeah. Well, I've got a paper here. This is the Times Tribune, which is in my area of Pennsylvania, in the Scranton area, Rust Belt area. And, Trump's America, put in the White House partially by flipping Pennsylvania from a blue state to a red state.
Right.
And the minorities in Philadelphia were not enough to counterbalance the rustic population in the rest of the state. So this is the America that we are now facing, and you see it as only getting worse racially.
Yeah, I think it's going to get worse racially, but I think the good news is that, as I say, according to the demographics, I mean, these these uneducated or non-college educated whites are going to be decreasing as a percentage of the population, and some of them will be dying out. So, I mean, I think it's going to right itself. But the question is, will America, still be around when that happens? I mean, it's almost that basic question.
Well, I mean, what is that? That sounds pretty dire. Will America still be around? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I think it's a matter of how long is it going to take him to pull apart the rest of America. I mean, I think I guess it's Arnold J. Toynbee wrote the book A Study of History, and basically societies survive or decline and rise up and decline. They rise up because they're able to deal with challenges and make solutions, and they die because they have an inability to solve problems. And in this country, it's racism, it's sexism, it's inequality, and those are problems that we're not solving, and that I think Trump is certainly not going to solve. I think his tax plan, if executed, is going to increase the amount of inequality in the country, and that indicates to me that this society, as we know it, is on the way out, and it's a question of how long that's going to take.
You yourself must have a very heartfelt reaction to this. Being among the first blacks recruited by what was then an Ivy League, lily white university, Harvard University, very elitist, very waspish back in those days, when blacks were still called Negroes. In fact, you're working on a book now that will soon be published called, The Last Negroes in Harvard.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so, you've, for 50 years now, you've seen an evolution of generally, I guess, better race relations. Now, do you see this and do you feel this as very emotionally, as a huge and frightening and destructive setback?
Oh yeah, I think it's a huge shift in the country. I think it's a huge setback, and for many ways, it's sort of coming full circle. I mean, when we went into Harvard in '59, we were the class of '63, and at that time, I mean, the race movement was just the civil rights movement was just getting kind of started. It had started in '5 when Rosa Parks, sat on that bus in Montgomery, and it just escalated. It got more intense, and and that's why the idea is that we came in as Negroes at Harvard and left as blacks. But I think, we're coming full circle. Now we're going back to bad race relations, and I think that's a real tragedy, the tragedy of Trump. And I am just really, saddened by it all and petrified. And, perhaps the good news is that maybe this will galvanize the progressives and liberals and blacks and, I mean, what were the numbers? Hillary won 58 million and.
Yeah, she won the popular vote by Less than a million, I believe. But yeah, the Clinton popular vote 59,916,000 and change. Trump 59,690,000. So by what 300,000 votes or so. Yeah, the popular vote.
And I think, and you know, I would suspect that many of the people who voted for Hillary were not, you know, racist as such, or were able to rationalize it somehow. My analogy
Voted
is,
for Trump, you mean?
yeah, voted for Trump. My analogy is that it's sort of like if you like Hitler, if Adolf Hitler, if you liked Hitler's health program, or if you liked Hitler's job program, but knew that he was intent on exterminating Jews, I mean, would you morally go ahead and vote for him? And I feel that's the case with Trump in the sense that there's no question that he's a racist and a bigot, but these people went ahead and voted for him, and that to me is the moral and spiritual problem, you know, with the country. I even indeed feel up here that a lot of the people were ashamed of voting for him. I did a little piece on a blog about how I actually wrote around and looked at some of the Trump signs, yard signs here, and there were not many. There were very few, especially compared to Romney, Obama, you know, 8 years ago. And now I'm thinking that maybe, perhaps, the people were embarrassed or ashamed to put up their Trump signs.
And that's one of the reasons that the polls were off, because
Exactly.
people were
Yeah.
reluctant to express their support for Trump.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So you see stormy times ahead, at least for the next 4 years.
Yeah, I think it. Yeah, I mean, the only thing is that what's going to happen when Trump is not able to, as I say, feed the beast, and when these these white workers realize that, hey, he's not going to be able to bring the jobs back. He's not going to be able to bring the coal industry back. He's not going to be able to, you know, do some of the things he's talked about. Maybe they will get to a point where it does matter, and they'll, you know, take action in the next elections and in the midterm elections. But I don't know. I mean, during the campaign, all of this stuff that was thrown at him was just didn't seem to matter. You know, I mean, so I don't know if they're going to still be in that mode if it doesn't matter what he does or what he says, you know, for the next 4 years or so.
All right. That's quite a discouraging view of Trump's America, but we'll see what happens. And again, you have a unique perspective, and we're looking forward to the publication of your book, which will be titled The Last
Negroes at Harvard.
And that'll be out sometime
in the next year or so.
Next year or so. Okay, and we'll be doing a piece on that, by the way. Yeah. So, Kent Garrett, thanks for being with us today for some very enlightening discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.